Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Wow. Thank you for coming and joining us as we are, after a 3-hour trip, broadcasting once again from beautiful South Fallsburg, upstate New York. And share is dedicated by A.B. Spry and family for the tefillah that everyone should get their children into yeshiva pleasantly and easily. We also dedicated by Baruch Ian, Lila Nishmas Esther Bas Yona, Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKoyin, and Shama should have an aliyah. We also learned for Marshall's brother, Mordechai Ben Sora Yehudis, for Chaya Tzipora Bas Rezel, for my Shver Avigdor Aryeh Ben Rivka. They should have a refuah shalema b'seich she'achel Yisrael. With pleasure, we welcome in Marshall Castle, Irving Fishbaum, Aaron Swade, Saba, Eddie Chazan, Baruch Ian, Shimon Klein. It's good to see you, Shimon. I hope your eyes are feeling better. They should get better and better. Mel Zachter, Shalom Fogel, Chaim Lerner, Berish Gesserman, Srel Fisher, Dr. Guy, Chaim Kramer, Dr. Black, Stephen Holtzman, Moshe Lehman, Richard Rosenzweig, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Moshe Jacklin, Rabbi Kranz, Nachman Chapler. It's wonderful to have everybody joining us. David Helfgott on Kol Lashon. We are holding by now, if you remember, we had a shaila. If a person says, here's your get, if I don't come back from now until 12 months, and then he dies. So the Tana of our Mishnah holds it's not a good get, because he said that it should only be a get after 12 months, and after 12 months he's dead. So you can't have a get after Misa. But we said the Rabbi Seinu permitted her to remarry. We said, who is Rabbi Seinu? We said the Rabbi Seinu is the Bezdin that permitted Shemin of a guy, Shemin Akim. And we said that that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, the grandson of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Because he holds like Rabbi Yossi that even though he didn't say Me'achshav, but Zmanai Shel Shtar Meichiach Alav, the date on the get, which was written on the day that he made the statement, that shows that he wanted it to be retroactive. So the Gemara now says, and we're holding by Amar Rab Abba, which is 3 lines into the Gemara, on Daf Ayin Vav Amid Beis. Amar Rabba Abba Breid Rab Chia Bar Abba Amar Rab Yochanan. Rab Abba, the son of Rab Chia, the son of Abba, said in the name of Rab Yochanan, Rab Yehuda Nasiya B'nai Shel Rab Gamliel Bar Rebbe. Rab Yehuda Nasiya, the son of Rab Gamliel Bar Rebbe, so that's what we said, the grandson of Rabbeinu HaKodesh. Hora, he paskin like Rabbi Yossi, but v'loy hoido loy kol siyatay, but all his colleagues did not agree with him. V'imre loy kol shaitay, and others say it means all the people of his time did not agree with him. Amalei Rabbi Lazar lahu Saba, Rabbi Lazar addressed a certain elderly person. Many times when it says Ahu Saba in Shas, it's referring to Eliyahu Navi. Ki sharituha, in the case where the Bezdin permitted her, in other words, where he died during the 12 months, when they permitted her to get married, did they only permit her, because remember, the husband died. But the question is, if the get is not a good get, then she would fall a yibum. Right? So we're saying that according to them, the get is a good get. But is the get a good get right away? Because obviously he's not coming back in a year. He's dead. Or is the get only good at the end of the year? So the Gemara says, Ki sharitua alter sharitua. Did they permit her immediately? Or after a year? La'alter sharitua. The argument would be that she should be permitted right away because obviously he's not coming back. He's in the cemetery. Oh, Dilma, Lacha Yud Beis Chayde Sharitua, she's only permitted after a year, Doi Kaim late to know, because that's when the condition is fulfilled. So the Gemara says, well, that same question you could ask on our Mishnah. Where he says, from now, if I don't come back in 12 months, and he dies within the year, do we say harizeh get la'alter? Do we say that it's a get right away? Get la'alter, he's not coming back. Or you do malach because that's when the Tanai is fulfilled. I came late tonight. So the Gemara says, hey, Nachanami, you're right. It's the same shaila on our Mishnah. However, Mishim Dahaya Bahu Maisa, but because he was there by that Maisa that they were talking about, so they cleared the shaila on that Maisa. But Enochanami, it would be the same shaila in our Mishnah. So now Abaya sets down rules. Amar Abaya. Abaya says that if a person says, Hakol Moedim, everybody agrees, where the husband gives his wife a get in the night, and he says, the get should be a good get when the sun comes out from its sheath, from its sack. No, it's in the morning. So, l'chinovka kamala, he said clearly that it should be a get only when sunrise comes, and therefore if he died in the night, it's not a good get. V'chimayis belelya, have a get lachamisa, it's a get after he died, and it's not a good get. Almanas sheteitze chamam nartika. If he says, here's your get on the condition that the sun comes out. Oh, that's different, because on the condition means here's your get now if the sun comes out. So then, even though he dies in the night, it's a good get, because he was alive when he made that statement. It's as if he said from now. And therefore, even though he dies later on that night, the sun did come up the next morning, and the Tanai was fulfilled. Retroactively, it was a good get while he was still alive. Okay, now, the question is, where he says, here's your get if the sun comes up tomorrow morning. So now, is that, but it should be from now? The Rabbi Seinu, who he said was the grandson of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, holds like Rabbi Yossi, the date of the shtar, which was while he was alive, proves that it's as if he said, me'achshav, from now. Like from now, imati, if I die. But Mar loy savalak Rabbi Yosi. One doesn't hold like Rabbi Yosi that is manishel shtar machrichalav. Va'avelei ki'im mati greda. Here's your get if I die. In other words, there is no me'achshav. There is no retroactive clause, and therefore he says, "Here's your get if the sun comes up." So it's only then when the sun comes up, and then he's already dead, and therefore it's not a good get. Now, let's go now to the discussion that we had about the ambiguity where he says, "Kisvu utnu get li'ishti la'achar yud beis chodesh." And they wrote the get during the 12 months. We said in the event that he said that after 12 months, write and deliver a get to my wife, so that's definitely no good. Because he said to write it after 12 months, and they wrote it during the 12 months. But where he said, kisvu write, utnu get le'ishti la'achar yud beis chodesh, there's an ambiguity. Because it could very well be that we put in a comment. Kisvu now. Utnu get le'ishti la'achar yud beis chodesh. So now we had a machlokes. Rabbanan say it's no good if they wrote it during the 12 months. Rabbi Yosi says it is good. Now at first the Gemara is going to think that Rabbi Yosi argues even on the Reisha. And Rabbi Yosi holds that there's no t'nai on the writing of the get. The t'nai is only on the chalois of the get. Well, let's see it inside. Kisvu tnu get le'ishti, write and deliver a get to my wife in loibas mikan rad yud beis chodesh. If they wrote it right away and they delivered it after 12 months, the Rabbanan say it's no good. Rabbi Yosi says it is good. Amalei Rabbi Yomi Rav Ashi, lema kasava Rabbi Yosi. Let's suggest that Rabbi Yosi argues even in the first case, where they said after 12 months, write and deliver it, and you wrote it during the 12 months, he holds even that's good. Because Kosav get al Tanai, if he makes the ksiva of a get totally on the Tanai kosher, it's kosher even if the Tanai is not mukuyim. Because the ikar is a Tanai on the get itself, not on the writing. Says Merloy, no, that's not so. He could insist that it be written, and then if it's written not according to his instructions, it's not good. But Vishani Hacha, it's different when he says, write the get and give it after 12 months. Rabbi Yosi says, you put in a comma. Vishani Hacha, if I don't come after 12 months, get leishti, so then it would be clear that the after the 12 months is on the writing too. But instead, v'amar kisvu utnu get, write it and deliver the get imloi basi. So we could put a comma after write it. Write it now. Hachi comma kisvu ma'achshav. Write it now. Usnu imloi basi, and give it if I don't come. Rabbanan say no. If he meant that, he should have said, write it now and deliver it after 12 months. Since he put it together, write and deliver it, it means both should be after 12 months. No matter which way he says it, there is akpada that the writing should be after 12 months, and therefore if he wrote it early, it's no good. And now, the Gemara says other questionable time frames. Tanarabana. Let's say Chatzkel says that if I don't come back, la'achar shvua. Now shvua is a 7-year cycle, a shemitah cycle. He says if I don't come back after the shemitah, so then you should be divorced. How much after the shemitah? So the Gemara says shana. We wait a year. We give him a year after the shemitah. What if he says if I don't come back la'achar shana, after a year? How much do we give him after the year? Chodesh, a month. Lachar Chodesh, after a month. How much do we give him after the month? Because he says, if I don't come back after the month, so he's allowing after the month. How much is after the month? Shabbos, a week. La'achar Shabbos Mai, if I don't come back after Shabbos. So here the Gemara says the famous thing. We know that a person could say Havdalah until Tuesday night. Exclusive of Tuesday night. Because Sunday, Monday, Tuesday belongs to the previous Shabbos, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday belongs to the next Shabbos. So that's what the Gemara says. Yosef Reb Zera coming to Reb Asi, V'imrlo Reb Asi coming to Reb Yochanan. V'ka'amar, Reb Zera was sitting before Reb Asi, others say Reb Asi was sitting before Reb Yochanan. V'ka'amar chad b'shabbat treyu tlasa basar shabbata. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is called after Shabbos. Arba v'chamisha malei Shabbos. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is already kamei Shabbos. So we're already getting ready for the next Shabbos. Right? It's already Tuesday night. It's already Wednesday. We're ready before Shabbos. That's why in the Yom of Yom Revi, we ended off with L'chun Ranana La Hashem, because already Wednesday belongs to the next week. Baruch Ian is already shopping for Shabbos. So once he says in the Yom tomorrow morning, L'chun Ranana, he's going to shop for the liver and all the delicacies.
I already finished shopping.
He's already finished shopping. He's working on Rosh Hashanah. Okay. I'm also working on Rosh Hashanah. I already got the phone number for the Baltakeya to make sure that he's in place. I'm already working on Rosh Hashanah too.
I'm trying to get a minion for Rosh Hashanah.
Really? Really?
We have Hashkama minion, and everybody seems to have petered out over the years, so it's a little tougher.
So don't have Ashkama Minyan.
Don't have Hashkama minion, we have those people who won't show up to show at all. So it's a good thing to keep it.
Is the Ashkama Minyan because they're going to go to work afterwards?
No. It's just more convenient for them to come to shul rather than not.
Rabbi Wein used to say over that his father always davened in the second minyan. And one time they came early, and he saw a lot of people leaving from the first minyan. And they looked like they were going somewhere. So his father told them, Beryl, don't ask. The people came to the first minyan, then got on the trolley and went to work. And that's the reason why the famous shul in Borough Park was called Shomer Shabbos. Because Shomer Shabbos davened at 9:30. Now we're not talking about nowadays where it's a Hasidic neighborhood and that's normal. We're talking about over 70 years ago. They davened at 9:30. And the reason why they davened at 9:30 is because they only wanted people that weren't going to work. And that's why it was known as Shomer Shabbos. That's why it became called Shomer Shabbos. The nisyonos that our Zaydas had, it's unimaginable. Two things come to my mind when I'm saying this. The first thing that comes to my mind is the famous question that they asked the Shiva Ramosha, that how come so many of the families in the time of the Great Depression that were Meiser Nefesh to keep Shabbos and their children assimilated and married Goyim. They asked him, how could it be? And Ramosha said, because when they kept Shabbos with a krechs, with a groan. He says keeping Shabbos with a krechs doesn't make for future days. He said that you should never ever say is schwer zu sein a Yid. It's hard to be a Yid. He says is glücklich zu sein a Yid. And this is a man who grew up with the NKVD, a man who, there's a 7-year difference between Reb Ruvain Feinstein and Reb David Feinstein, because for 7 years they didn't have a mikveh in Luban. The Bolsheviks didn't allow a mikveh in Luban. So here Moshe was then a very young man. And for 7 years he didn't have a mikveh. And yet Moshe said is glücklich zu sein a Yid. It's fortunate to be a Yid. The second story that brings to my mind is a story I'll never forget. Reb Zilberstein says it in his first wonderful svarm, the Tufchi Yabiyu. He says that there was a man during the Great Depression that every week, he was a hard worker. Every Sunday he applied for a job, he got it. Friday he said he's not coming in the next day. So the man told him, you're fired. You don't come in, you're fired. So he says, I want you to write me a pink slip. So in those days, it wasn't a litigious society. The boss looked at him and says, you want a pink slip? I write you a pink slip. You're fired. And every Friday he would come home with the pink slip and put it in a drawer. And after every Friday he was fired. And his wife would ask him, what is this, your misery drawer? So he said, you'll see. A week before Sukkot, he took out all the red slips, pink slips. They gave him in different colors. And he told his children, we're going to make chains for the sukkah from these slips. These slips are our noi sukkah, that we were moise nefesh every week to keep Shabbos. This is the beautification of our sukkah. The Gemara continues. Tanya, we're into the Brisa. By the way, I'm noticing now that we have 30 Zoomers on. Nice to have 30 Zoomers here. See, when Shimon Klein comes, Richard Rosenzweig, even though they're tired, Yehuda from Harnof, and we don't have Mark Frankel here though. Mark. Tanya, Rebbe Aimer la'achar regel. Let's say he says, here's your get, if I don't come after the Yom Tov. So, Nafik Reb Chia Dorsha, Rebbe Yomi la'achar regel shloshim yom, 30 days. Nafik Reb Chia Dorsha mishmei de Rebbe. Rebbe Chia went out and said this halach over in the name of the Rebbe. V'kolsei, and they praised him. Yeah, that's Taka Din according to Rebbe. Then he said it mishmei de Rabbin, that the whole rabbinical community holds that way. V'loi kolsei, they didn't praise him. So it says Alma les hilchos hakavase. This shows that that's not the halach. Hadru lach misha achazu, hadru lach misha achazu, and hadru lach misha achazu. New parak, new adventure. Hazayra get le'ishtay. A man throws a get to his wife. V'hi b'soich beisa, and she's in her house. Now this means in her house, it means it was her nichsei malug. That means it was a home brought in when she got married from her from her parents. Oy b'soich hatzeru, which the husband has rights of usufruct with. Harizuma Gereshes. The Gemara is going to say, why is she divorced? The husband has rights in it also. So the get didn't go completely out of his rishus. The Gemara is going to address that. Zorkala b'seich beisai, but if he throws it to her in his house, or in his courtyard, afilu hi ima b'mita, afilu hu ima b'mita, even if he's with her in the bed, but the bed is his. Ein megaresh, she's not divorced. However, l'soicheka, if it lands in her lap, or l'soichalta, or in her personal knitting basket, then harizu megareshes. So now the Gemara says, how do we know that she could be divorced if it's not given into her hand? Because the pasuk says, "V'nasan biyada." So right away the Gemara asks, "Minani mili." The Tan Rabbanan v'nasan biyada, put it in her hand. Ein li ala yada. Gaga chatzeira v'karfifa minayin. How do we know on her roof, on her courtyard, or on her enclosure? Talmud leima v'nasan mikol makom. And the same halacha is by Geneva. A Ganav has to pay kefil. It's not only if we find the Geneva in his hand, and he actually stole it, but even if the item went on his courtyard and he locked the courtyard, or he locked the enclosure or the rooftop, he also has to pay kefil. Let's see it inside. Not only im himatzei simatzei biyadai, ainly ala yadai, gagai chatzeiroi v'karfifoi minayin. How do we know that if it's in the rooftop, the courtyard, or the enclosure, he's also chayiv kefil? Talmud lemer himatzei simatzei mikol makom. And we need to teach this din by get, and we need to teach this din by kefil. L'tzricha. Di ashminan get. If we would teach it by get, mishum debal karcha megarsha, because he has the right to divorce her against her will, and therefore it's more easy to send her away because it doesn't have to be with her consent. Aval ganav, the less about karcha, he's not chayiv if it came into his possession against his will. Then he wouldn't be chayiv kefil. Ein maloi. Yeah, because then we throw the book at him. So it's more expensive, even if it's on his property. I will get a maloi. I might think it has to be in her hand, mamish tzricha. So the Gemara asks, chatzeira, if you put it on her courtyard, but wait a second. The husband has the right of usufruct. So Masha Konsa Isha Konabaila. What the wife owns, the husband has rights for fruit. He gets, if it's a rooftop, he gets the rent. So he has partial ownership, so it's not going out of his rishus. Amar Rav Elazar, so Rav Elazar says, because of ladinu dvarim einli b'nechsaya. I have no claim or words with your property. Says the Gemara, but if something is yours, you cannot make it not yours by just saying, removing yourself. If he wrote that to her, it doesn't count. But Tanya, like we learned, if you own a field, and you say, I have no claim or words of this field, I have no involvement from it, and my hand is removed from it, that's not a way to free yourself of ownership. You just can't say, I withdraw. Says the Gemara, no, here he withdrew before it came into his ownership. It comes, Nichse Mulug comes into his ownership when he gets married. When he was an Orus, he said, I don't want to have anything from you. Oh, then he could withdraw, says Gemara, Imre Debei Rabyani, because of love, Oida Arusa. He writes while she was still engaged. Ukid Rav Kahana, the Amr Rav Kahana, Nachla Boloi La'odam Emakam Acher. Something that comes to a person from elsewhere, Odam Masna Allah Shalom Yershana. A person could stipulate that he doesn't want to get it. Ukid Rava, and like Rava, the Amr Rava, I don't want the Takanas Chachamim. Kigain zu, like we'll see that a woman could say, I don't want support and I won't give you my paycheck. Shaimelai. My Kigain zu, like this, Kidravun Amarav, Amravun Amarav, Yechayla Isha Chetaim Labala, a woman could say to her husband, Aini Nizainis Veini Ice. Says the Gemara, Rav asks an interesting question. And how does it help putting in her hand? Her hand also belongs to the husband for her handiwork. So, Rav Amar Ati Yada Miloi Kanya Leilabal. So how can he put it in her hand? It has to be that it happens simultaneously. That with the get, she acquires completely her hand, and therefore she acquires the get. The same thing, with the get, she acquires the full courtyard, because the husband loses the Yusufruk, and therefore, 32 Zoomers. As Philippe just walks in, welcome Philippe, as we are on Ayin Zayin Amid Beis, Hashem Oiz Liyamo Yitain. There is a word that I always say, not always, but a lot of times I say on Daf Ayin Zayin. It says, Hashem Oiz Liyamo Yitain, Hashem Yevarech Es Amoy Vashalom. So it connects strength to peace. Now that's easy to understand, because it takes a strong person to look away. How do you make peace? You make peace by looking away from the not nice things that people do. If you don't look away, there's fights. But it takes a strong person to look away. Right? Somebody like Marshall comes on, even though we say such nice things about him all the time. Right? He's a strong man. Right? Moishel Baruchai. So there's a famous mimer in Avos Rav Nosson. You know, you ask a student of Pirkei Avos, as we welcome in Sandy Grunfeld, who's joining us. There's a famous statement in Pirkei Avos, Ezel Gibar HaKovesh Es Yitzrei, who is mighty, somebody that conquers temptation. But there's another definition of might in Avos Rav Nosson. Ezel Gibar HaOysa Misaynai Ayavai. Who is mighty? Somebody that makes out of an enemy a friend. So you see that might is associated with peace. It's a wonderful idea. So that's Hashem Oiz Liyamo Yitein Hashem Yivarech Esama V'Shalom. That's a Daf Ayin Zayin word. But anyway, so Rava says you don't need to come on to any fact that he preempted his rights to the courtyard, to the house. It comes simultaneous with the get. She gets the full rights of her property, and therefore she acquires the get. Just like she gets the rights of her hand, and she could acquire the get. That's what Rava says. Rava Amati Yoda Miloi Kanya Leilabal. The husband has the rights of her hands for her handiwork, her salary. Ela Gita v'Yoda Boin Ke'echad. Her hand and the get come simultaneously. Hachanami Gita v'Chatzeira Boin Ke'echad. Amalei Ravina l'Ravashi. Rava Yad the Isha Kakashale. Why is the yad of the woman a difficulty? Nehei de Kani Le'Lamasi Yadeha, even though he has the rights for her to work, but Gufa Mi Kanila, her body is not acquired. Her body is hers. And therefore, when you put it in her body, she definitely acquires it. What he's saying is that in the woman, the husband is not a partner in her body. Her body is wholly hers. So the Gemara says, you're right. Rava was not talking about the yad of the wife. But the din is, you could free an Evet Kanani by putting a get shikra in his hand. But why? His hand is owned by the owner. And there, the actual body of the Evet is owned by the owner. So why does he go free when he puts the get in the Evet's hand? Amalei, Rava Yad HaEvet Kakashalei. Lamandi Amma Bishtar Al Yidei Atzmai, that you could give a get shikra to the Evet Kanani himself. But why? Yad Evet Ki Yad Rabbi Yadamya. The hand of the Evet is owned by the master. Ela Gitay V'Yodai Bayin Ke'echad. We say that simultaneous with the get shikra, he acquires his hand, and therefore he acquires the get shikra. Hachanami Gita V'Chatzera Bayin Ke'echad. So now the Gemara tells us, and it's really amazing as we journey through these Gemaras. We're really journeying through hard parts of Shas together. It really is. The Alim should know that these Gemaras are certainly not a walk in the park. The Alim can be very proud of their learning this difficult Masechta.
Rabbi, could a get be delivered on Shabbos by any stretch?
It's good that you asked that. We're going to talk about that tonight. Hold on.
Very nice.
Hold on, Mamish. He's showing a little prophecy, our Philippe.
He peaked.
Now. Baruch Shekivanti. Now, says the Gemara, let's see it inside. Hahu Shchiv Meira, there was a dying man. The cause of law Gita L'Debiseyu Bahade Fanya de Mali Shapsa. He wrote a get for his wife Friday, but he didn't give it to her. And he didn't get a chance to give it to her. He wrote the get, but he didn't give it to her. L'macher, on the Shabbos, Tokif Le Alma. Ooh, things were looking very bad, Le'alena. Now, he very much wanted to give a get to his wife that she shouldn't be trapped in Yibam. He wanted that she should have the options. She shouldn't have to marry his brother. So also the Kami de Rava, they came before Rava. The problem is that the ruling was that a get is muktzah. And therefore you can't actually pick it up to give it to her. So what do you do? Amalahu, so he said to them, Zilu Amrule, go tell him, Liknei mihalo lahu dukta di Yosef Begita. Let him transfer to her the ownership of the room that the get is in. Now, in order for her to assume ownership, she has to do, one of the ways karka is acquired is through chazaka. And one of the ways to do chazaka is to lock the door. So he told her, "V'tezel ihi," let her go, "V'tichayid," and lock the door, "V'tiftach," and then open it. The purpose of opening it is to show that she did it, the act, not just because the family wanted the door locked, but she was doing it as a ma'aseh of chazaka. V'tachzik bey, and acquire the room. Nan, no gadar poretz kolshu, if you lock or fence or make a good breach in a smallest amount, harizu chazaka, that's a kinyan chazaka.
You could also crack
and then when a chazaka is made, we'll learn the Pashut Pshat, or the Rashi learns differently. And then when she acquires the room, then she acquires the get because it's in her room. So now, The Gemara says, but even if it's her room, the husband has the right of usufruct, because whatever is hers, he has the right to use it. So Amalei Ravila Shulrava Mashikansi Isha Kanabala. So it doesn't go completely to her. Ichsif, he was embarrassed. L'saif, at the end, Iglei Milsa Darusa, that she was an Arusa. An Arusa, the husband doesn't have it usufruct. Amarava Imamru b'Nesua Ya'emru ba'Arusa. And then Rava said, it's not even a kasha. Because the room and the get come together at the same time. Amarava Leishna Arusa Leishna Nesua Gita v'Chatzera Ba'in Ke'ach. Said Gemara, but Rava already said that. V'Amar Rava made Kara. Says Gemara, no, Ki Amra Rava Hai Ma'isam. And Rava arrived at this thought, it was in this case. Now I told you that Rashi learns a little differently. Rashi learns that when she acquires the room, then she acquires the get through a kinyan agav. Because that's the halacha, I told you this many times, that if Marshall wants to buy from me 100 carburetors, and he doesn't want to make a Maisa Kinyan on each carburetor, so he could rent from me a room, and when he acquires the room, he acquires agav, the 100 carburetors. I usually say 100 bowling balls, but for Marshall's benefit, I said carburetors.
Uses them anymore.
No?
They're gone.
Really? No, they don't make carburetors anymore?
Not very much, no. Oh, Philippe uses one. There you go.
No, I don't. Is there a difference between a slave and a
One
wife?
second.
A slave gets freed on Shabbos. I mean, a slave becomes his own property on Shabbos, presumably, right? Because
why? When was the last slave that you knew got freed on Shabbos?
I mean, if he's are you talking to Evan Kanaani? I mean, a Jewish slave, he doesn't have, he doesn't have to work. I mean, doesn't he have his own?
No, we're not talking about a Jewish slave here. We're talking about an Eved Kanani. Now, so if you learn the Agav Pshat, then the question of the Gemara is a little bit difficult to understand. So that's why I learned the other Pshat.
What about a kinyan on Shabbos? The fact that she's
so that yes, there's a lot of things that we make an exception. We make an exception of kinyan on Shabbos, and we make an exception about a Maisa Bezdin.
It also sounds as there's a little bit of lacking of a Nesina over there. It's kind of like a Tasa V'Lomana Asa.
But that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. It's not get Habala La'achamikan. Because he announces that he wants when she takes possession of the room, he says, now I want her to be divorced. Not before. V'hi b'seich beisa. We said, now this is interesting. We said if he puts the get in her house, and she's in the house, and she's in the courtyard. Now, why does she have to be in the house and in the courtyard? If it's a chotzer amishtameres, then why does she have to be there? So this is actually a subject of controversy. Amar Ula says, "V'hu she'omedes b'tzad beisa," where she's standing by the house, or b'tzad chatzer, and that's the pashtus of the Mishnah. It says, "V'hi b'seich beisa." Rabbi Yishia, she doesn't have to be there. Even if she's in Tveria and the courtyard is in Sipuri, or he b'tzipura, she's in Sipuri, the Chatzera b'Tveria, Megareshes. Says Gemara, but that's not what the Mishnah says. It says that she was in the house, she was in the courtyard. Hachi kamar. V'hi kamisha b'seich beisa, v'hi kamisha b'seich chatzera. It's as if she was in the house, it's as if she was in the courtyard, meaning that it was a protected house and a protected courtyard. The cave in the Chatzim Mishtaberes L'data, since the courtyard is being protected by her, she has her fence around it, she has her locked doors around it, he miskareshes. Now here Rashi says, what does it mean, Mishtameres L'daita? This is to exclude where the husband gives the get to her shivcha. So even though the shivcha protects the get and the shivcha belongs to her, but she's not protecting the get, the shivcha is protecting the get, that wouldn't be good. Be kiddush. So the Gemara says this machloek is whether she actually has to be there or not. Lema b'hakamifli. The Maris of a chotzer mishum yoda is rabbi. That a chotzer is included because it's an extension of our hand. Or Maris of a chotzer mishum shlichus is rabbi. That the chotzer is like her agent. So if you say it's like her hand, so she has to be there, like her hand. If it's a shliach, she doesn't have to be there. Says more, look, no, that's not the machlok. Stikuli alma, chotzer mishum yoda is rabbi. Chotzer is an extension. Mar savar ki yoda. Ma yoda b'smucha, she has to be nearby, because she's near our hand. Af chatzera b'smucha, she has to be nearby. V'idach, well, her hand is attached to her. Does the house have to be attached to her? V'idach ima yoda b'dvuka, af chatzera b'dvuka. Ella, rather, it's enough ki yoda ma yoda mishtameres l'data, that she's doing the protecting. That excludes the case of the slave woman. Af katzera mishtameres l'daita, la'afukei chotza mishtameres shaloi l'data. Like we said, if you put it in the hands of our maidservant. Now, we have one more case for the evening. I know, you're sorry to hear that. I know. What could you do? All good things have to come to an end, Rabbi Yisait. I'm sorry. Although Marshall's ready to go extra, but there is something going on next week, Rabbi Yisai. I didn't figure out how we're going to do it, but next week, on Tuesday night, I give my big Q&A in the Irgun Shirei Torah. So that starts at 9, and I do that live. So obviously we can't have the daf at the normal time, Tuesday evening. I have not perfected a way to be in two different places live at the same time. I haven't. I see Ruvain has an idea. He'll tell me later. But so we'll see. We might do a double on Monday. We'll see. We'll see. We'll decide what happens. Anyway, Hahu Gavra dezorik lagita l'debisei. A man threw a get to his wife. Havakaima b'chotzer. She was standing in the courtyard. Ozel gita, and there's no coincidences. The get went and nafal b'pisla. Instead of falling on the floor of the courtyard, it fell on a piece of wood. Amar Rav Yosef Chazinon, Ihavya arba amas al arba amas. If it's 4 by 4 amas, then plag lo reshusa l'nafshe. It's a different domain, and therefore it didn't fall in her courtyard, and she's not divorced. V'iloi, but if it's not 4 by 4 amas, then it's bottled to the chotzer, choder reshusi, and she is divorced. So the Gemara says, well, whose log is it anyway? But my askinan, if it's her courtyard, it's her log. So what's the difference? Ella, it must be in his courtyard. So so if it's his courtyard, then even if it's not 4 amas, it makes no difference. In his courtyard, it never went out of his rishus. Says, what happened is he said to her, for today, I'm lending you my courtyard. But he only gave her the courtyard. He didn't give her another rishus. The chad mokam moishle inshe. Person, when he lends only one place. Trei mekayim is 2 places, the courtyard and this other domain, loy moishle inshe. So if it's another domain, he didn't give that to her, and then she wouldn't be divorced. And that which we say that if it is to be a different domain, it has to be 4 by 4 amas. That's only if it's not high 10 tefachim. If it's high 10 tefachim, it'll be a different domain. And even if it's not dollar by dollar, and it's not 10 tefachim, Ella the Lesley Shem Levi. It doesn't have its own name. Aval Islay Shem Levi. Oh, that's Gloria's stump, or that's Chatzkel's stump. So it has its own identity. Then Afal Gab the Loigvayasar, even if it's not I 10 tefachim, Afal Gab the Loyavayab Amas, and it's not 4 by 4 amas, it would be a different domain, and therefore he didn't give her that second domain, and then she would not be divorced.